The groove is one of the most important things in techno and house music, and if you can get a good groove like this, or like this, or like this, you can be sure that you're about to make a good track. Today, we are going to take a 3 groove patterns that you can use and immediately level up your track. Let's jump in. The first one sounds like this. The first thing, of course, the kick. For this to work, you need a really strong kick. For that, I'm going to go to my seismic kick pack, just duplicate. Sounds like this. It is really strong and punchy, right? For this one to work, we need the off bass pattern. So kick, bass, kick, bass. There should be a dance between these two. That means kick, bass, kick, bass. We are on F. Sound-wise, for the sub bass, I don't want something too advanced, something good and subby. How do you do that? Create a tight envelope, something like this. So we have initial up and sustain somewhere around here. Don't go too low, otherwise you will lose the sub bass loudness. And then we need a filter. Don't need to open too much, a short opening time, just to give a bit of edge. Now we have this. However, this bass is not strong enough. We need something with a body to cover the top area of the bass. We take the same pattern. For this to work, I need something a bit shorter, a bit more pluckier, but also a bit brighter. You can use any synth. I'm using the high because I like the high's more analog vibe, especially with this dirty filter. This is like sub, right? We give the envelope modulation to the filter. Something like that, a bit of distortion. So we can get that top end more. I have a whole demonstration how this works over here. You cut the low end so that the sub bass can stay on the sub and the high part don't stay on the high. What we do, low pass. Now it's thinner, but brighter almost. Saturation. More EQ. Sidechain the kick. And final EQ. Now feels much more stronger on the offbeats. The final touch is a bit groove processing, but I like to do sometimes saturate all together, which helps the gluing sounds together. And limiting or clipping, in this case I use this classic. Now we have this. Right? If you want this one to work, you have to be really careful about the percussions. And for that you need darker, more impactful percussions, especially on the offbeats. Here, for example. Right? But that's only the first part. You need to kind of feel properly so it doesn't feel like there's only one single percussion. Let's get another softer impact for kind of response for this. Right? So they're already kind of helping each other out. Also, all these sample packs are coming from my FX Tools preset pack. The other ones, kick comes from my seismic, and percussions and other samples often comes from my analog drums if you want to take a look. These were the darker parts, so we need kind of a balance those dark percussions with light percussions. Very common example will be just using like something like a clay. Right? Percussions may sound a bit weird without the snare actually. We could have started with the snare, but I just want to focus percussions first. And maybe on beat percussion here, like this. Kind of connects these two. Because we are going this very strong groove, like dum 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 dum. You need kind of really strong snare for this, like dum dum pa. Boom, boom, pa. So you can really feel the power of the groove. It's really important. Power of the pattern really depends on the snare, okay? I have this snare sound. Timbre-wise, it's really good, but power-wise, it's not there yet. Let's layer this with a clap. Without. With. Now we need kind of tail end power. How do you get that? Via the reverb. Right? Cut a bit the super low. We have these dark percussions. I don't want to take too much away from them. The one thing that you can do, either suppress the tail with a duck or like another volume shaper, or with the simple transient control. In this case, I'm ducking down the sustain. If you go more aggressive, like with overdrive, I would actually suggest doing the volume part. I will show it soon in another part, but I think this is good enough. Right? And final touch, of course, to make it really hitting hard, I'm gonna clip it so it doesn't be like super tight, transient, and then nobody. So what we do, I'm using again ozone for this. You can use any clipper. Without. Just makes the body come through. It's a tiny effect, but it is there. And finally, to emphasize on snare, I want like a sweep in effect. So reverse it and layer it under. We are not gonna do in every beat so that it doesn't get super boring and in your face all the time. If you just resample the tail, almost like this reverse white noise, right? Turns into this. I like to repeat this oftentimes every other snare. Have you ever wanted to clone yourself? At least your voice. Now you can. How does it work? Let me show you. So the first thing, you have to go to lalal.ai. They have really cool AI products, but what we are interested is their voice cloner. You are asked for providing 10 to 50 minutes clear audio without music or noise. And once it is done, it starts creating your AI replica. Now we have this. You can actually pick both from the female and male version of you, and then you can also have like the speech and singing version of it. Here we have the female singing me. Blanket spread on the ground, basket full of treats, carpet of grass under our bikes, the swing set creaks. It sings better than me for sure. And talking. There was a small village nestled between rolling hills and a sparkling river. It sounds more sassier than I talk. The villagers lived in harmony, tending to their crops and caring for their animals. And for sure a bit better grammar and pronunciation, but yeah, sounds like me. If you want to try voice cloning yourself, check the link below. And thanks lalal.ai for sponsoring this video. We are really focusing on the offbeat. The hats also plays quite a bit important role here to feel like the tss, the tss. For that, we need to start with a very strong hi-hat sound. So I have this hat. The sound itself initially kind of strong, but we need to make it stronger. How do you do that? First, I just want to have a bit more highs. But the crucial part is actually using first reverb, so mashing the sound a bit basically. Right? Spreading as well, but then distorting afterwards so that my sound kind of glues each other with the original sound. Right? And I don't want that long tail. Now we are using what I said earlier. So we are controlling the tail and the pre-tail with like a volume automation like this. Right? We are cutting up this part. So it sounds snappier and it's going in and out because we have an initial groove in it. So it's like it's not always on the grid. It gives this like lagging feeling sometimes. Look how much this adds to the groove immediately. Right? I like to layer this one with the accent, so it is a bit more humanized. Accent mean like hi-hats playing in and out sometimes. And on top of that, I feel like there's initial transit needed. It can be like more snappier, right? For that, I have this. Very snappy, right? And for the accent part, if you take a look at the pattern one more time, off pattern, these are the accent hits. They're subtle, they're not that important. Again, for this pattern, you need really this on and off beat alteration. So if you put two abusive patterns, you kind of suppress that feeling. Now we have this. Now you need a bed under the drums so that you can feel a bit warmth. I'm just using Vox ambience from my packs again. Right? Both are touching the kick so that we have this groove going on. So we can feel that. Super dance, isn't it? You immediately can feel the groove so strong. This really depends on your taste, but I like to put some ear candies. Things like, I would call them donk. Again, you can find those things in my packs. Like just groove here. To create this more underwater feeling, I like to put like a horn, like simple sawtooth. But you put a heavy OTT on it so that the bass is super suppressed. So you don't really hear the bass part so much. So it kind of feels weird. It's like under pressure almost, right? And cutting lows and side chin kick. So boom. And then finally, slight vocal stuff. So now we have this. Think about how easy would it be to write track on top of this. I'm not really exaggerating, 60% there. If you're enjoying the video up to now, please consider like and subscribe. It really helps a ton, so I can make more videos like this. Nowadays, rolling bass lines are everywhere, from trance to techno to house music, everywhere. The problem is making them sounding better than everyone else. While simple patterns may help, there are a couple of tricks that can really improve it, and we're gonna do that. So it sounds like this. It sounds interesting because there are some pattern tricks that makes it better than just simple rolling bass lines. So let's start. The first thing, kick again, important, coming from again Seismic Pack. Relatively strong kick, you can actually cut it down and make this one smaller. But if I want to go stronger feel, we can keep it this way. So it can easily be like, let's say, this long. But I'm gonna come back when I'm doing the bass, alright? Simple kick, nothing fancy. The fancy part is of course your bass. The pattern itself is of course simple. Rolling bass line, just hitting 16 times every bar, right? And then we have small chord progression here, doesn't matter that much. The sound itself though, it will matter. We will again have two layers, top and the sub bass. For the sub bass, you know it already, I don't make it complicated because it's just there to give ours the power. And we're gonna do a very similar approach over here. Relatively small envelope on the volume. The cutoff doesn't have anything and a bit distortion. It is like it's very repeating simply because we don't have any sidechain on it, so we don't feel kick and groove. When you put something like this, you can even duck more. Now we feel it, don't we? Or you can use something like a sound shaper. In this case, I will go something like this though. Right? It's very similar to the compression, really. They almost sound the same. So depends on what you want. There is no one single way to do same thing. That's all we need. The more important part for the rolling bass line is the color, because the color gives all this like rolling feel to the sound. And of course, those sounds exist in my packs, but I'm gonna explain how we can do it in your own sound design process. So what I'm doing here really very kind of salted waveform, right? Again, we change the envelope. We have much sharper, pluckier envelope now. The rawness comes from envelope automation on the distortion. So this distortion gives more drive each hit. Right? Without them, it doesn't sound the same. And I don't want to simply just put a cutoff automation for this sound. I want more power, more on the chest kind of. Hence, automating the distortion so that we have the kind of sound. Very cool. And a multiband. And then we cut the lows. And sidechain the kick, of course. And I have UAD slight boost on the mids, but not much. Doesn't change much at all. Now we have this. But you can improve this, and improving oftentimes comes with the accents again on the bass. You can either do it by adding another like a synth, is a VST. In this case, I have again another rolling bass line pattern. Like it's not really rolling, but it's like more 8 bass. Right? So it gives like a color to the second half of the rolling bass. And the reason it's like doing again, we have it on it, volume sidechain. And to make it even more interesting, we have a cutoff automation, so it opens up in the second half, like this. It's already much more interesting, this simple rolling bass line. But you can make it even more interesting. In this case, just a simple sample. And we are even accentuating our accentuating sound. So this was accentuating, right? And we are accentuating the second hits of that sound. So it sounds like, right? I know it feels weird. Okay, what are you doing? But when you add them together, then we have this super nice. Just so groovy, right? Once you have this, you want to decide on your hats. If you want to emphasize your rolling feeling, that is fast, rolling, get going feeling, you need 16 hats and really emphasize that sound. 16 hat pattern is just 16 hats like this. If you want, you can like give it a bit groove, lagging feel like this. Now we have this. Hat coming from, again, either my Onyx or Analog Drums pack. Giving this slight sidechain. Go here, random path, so it's not always in the middle. because we have the bass rolling in the middle as well. What I like to do later on, sidechain to the snare, so when the snare hits, it's like, it's hard to explain, but when the snare hits, look what happens. You see how the sound is ducking? Just to give space to snare. Right? And because we want to go this fast feeling speed, your off-hat should be slightly smaller and doesn't take too much space. Like in the first example, we had the off-hat very big. So it gets like this kick and hat feeling. In this case, it's more like a hat kind of sound, okay? Like this. Now we have this. The 16s are very loud. Now, the snare will be the main part to make everything work and glue together. And we are doing exactly what I talked previously. So I have this like cool snare. Snare sounds actually very cool snare. It sounds super nice. This one is coming from my own example pack. This is so good snare. Oh my god. Okay, so even without anything, it actually sounds pretty decent. It's like fat snare, right? But what I want, like again, this like whooshy tail on top. So I'm cutting like super lows and super highs. So we add reverb, distort it, and duck the tail. So we contain the tail, so cleaner mix overall. So good. Again, the bed layer, the sound under it, just a pad sound, doing like this 16 padded on it. So even the pad sound has this vibe or speed. Sidechain to kick. And infiltrator giving this kind of slight ducking pattern. And if you want to make it even more danceful, you can add slight reverbs and downlifters. So it ends up like this. And of course, sidechain your effects so they can react to the kick as well. Slightly, you don't need to do super aggressive, something like this, right? Now, you can take this, go write big sounds on top, and you have a good track. All grooves that we are making today is actually from my new Groove Tools sample pack. If you want to learn from or use these grooves as song starters, take a look at that. Are you tired of like under 130 BPM stuff? Now I get something for you. Sounds like this. Very aggressive, very in your face pattern, and there are a couple of things that are really important in this one. So let's start it. The way this pattern works is actually creating rumble bass together with rolling bass, but modifying rolling bass so it's not really rolling bass. So for the low end, again from just seismic techno kicks, I know it's just they're just so good, like you really don't need anything else. I'm not even kidding. So this is it. Very strong low end rumble, but we need this one is modified rolling bass line. Why do I call it modified? Because we remove first two notes, so it's like almost like offbeat but faster. If you just do offbeat, it will feel slow, like this one's like so almost like a train going, right? And it's really important. The sound itself is very strong because we are doing this very aggressive part. We start with this more half flaky sound with a lot of cutoff automation. No effect. Envelope 2 is very fast automating the cutoff, right? And even we have the LFO doing the same thing, kind of. So the cutoff moves super fast, opens up fast and closes fast. The reason is that I'm going to put a dispersion on it from here. It kind of makes it sound a bit more plasticky than EQ. I feel like the sound is a bit too bright for this kick and bass. So I'm really ducking a little bit off or the compressing in the mid bands from here. So they kind of glue more together this way. And then I want a bit delay. How does it work? We have this parallel chain. The one is clean and the other one is having a delay. And delay is ducking on the sound. So every time when a clean sound hits, we are ducking the delay a bit more. So it's kind of create this line of kind of a rolling bass line almost with the delay itself, but the delay creates also stereo image, so like right? It's super clean and nice sounding effect. And then finally EQ. Making even darker. Now, I was using this actually in one of my tracks, so track required me to make the low end a bit darker. So this EQ is just for that part. So you can very well use this without it too, depending on what your track requires. It's very strong, it's like very in your face, like super nice. This type of grooves depends on what you want. I want like this strong in your face feel. This requires again very hard snare. We do exactly the same thing again, the EQ, reverb, overdrive, duck. Original. We make it a bit more like brighter and sustained. Right? First two was more biscuity sound, this one is more Alice sound, right? Between my two new allies. If you haven't seen, I have a whole video over here. I'm explaining with the new allies coming with Alice FM more harder stuff, with the biscuity doing more smoother, softer stuff. But this is more like Alice FM it is. To make this even more groovier, the pattern for the hats has to be a bit more accenty, a bit more groovy, right? You have to come up with some idea. So in this case, we have a pattern like this. Right? It just gives a bit more vibe to the sound. To make it also a bit more aggressive, we are adding a bit overdrive and EQ. Without it, it sounds like this. A bit more in your face, it volumes up a little bit as well. These two hi-hats are very similar sounding, but we are just cutting the tail up for the small tiny accent sound. Right? This adds really the groove. Compared to our first groove, this feels much more faster because of that repeating stuff. But the main in-your-face feeling, this is really important for this type of sound. When you're making like these aggressive beats, you need a part that everything like comes down, like washes down to you, and you feel like, oh my god, all this power. And that power actually comes from the right. Many producers, they don't even aware this exists. You take a right sample. It's very common in pop music and rock music where you have a chorus part and the drummer hits the right constantly because it gives this very bright, very energetic sound. Like this. We are using it as 8-beat, not rolling. So the reason being I want this now wash it up. How do you do that? I'm emphasizing highs and drive it. And then put a duck so that with the kick it really breathes. Like a sound. Do you see how much power a simple ride adds to the sound without? This is so powerful when you make that energy jump from your, for example, verse to the chorus or the drop. This will give this like all the power to you feel and coming down feel, and it will really add up. And this is the core of this pattern. But you can do, of course, as usual, add a pad or the background layer. Simple pattern. It's just playing the power note, C sharp and G sharp. We are just like taking up the middle part and side chaining so that we have this dark ambience. And finally, if you want to wash it up with a downlifter, then you have this. And this is kind of a floor banger. You play this and people jump. That's it. Now you can feel like you have the grooves now, but you still need the hooks and come up with the main ideas better. But don't worry about it because I have a video over here that you can take a look.